Welcome to Human Anatomy and Physiology. You've probably already been in class and we talked about why we're taking this course. It's because you live in your body your whole life. And it's nice to know about your body. The syllabus expectations, we talked about that. Yes. You will dissect cats. They're important. So, safety contracts, we talked about that. Always use the brushes to clean all scissors and scalpels. Wear your goggles in the lab or you get detention. Stay focused. Main words, body awareness. Practice body awareness in labs. Be careful. Be responsible. Textbooks. Yeah. Okay, so what's anatomy? Anatomy is the parts, right? Just the parts of the body. And we study systemic anatomy, which is by the systems. It's common for introductory courses such as the high school course. Examples of systems are, as noted, circulatory, nervous, skeletal, muscular, and we'll hit the integumentary system, which is the skin, the muscular and skeletal this semester. Regional anatomy is what they do more in medical school. And surface anatomy is basically the study of the external features and finding landmarks. Physiology, remember, is the function, how the body works. In college, you'll probably take one semester of anatomy, learn all the parts. Second semester, physiology, find out how it works. Here, I give you a general overview of both at the same time. It sets a good foundation for college. Okay, what is this thing called life? Freshman biology, we talk about the 6 characteristics of life. It must undergo metabolism. It must be organized. Organelles, cells, tissues. Some only cells if they're bacteria. It must respond to a stimulus. It's got to grow. Yeah, even bacteria grow a bit. It must be differentiated. So you've got organelles, so differentiated. And that could also include reproduction. And development. It's got to develop. Is a virus a living thing? No. It's a protein capsid with either DNA or RNA inside of it. It requires a living host to reproduce it. So therefore a virus is not a living thing. Levels of organization. Okay, we talked about inside the cell. We found little tiny organs back in the day. We called them organelles. The mighty mitochondria, the ribosomes, the endoplasmic reticulum, the cytoplasm, the plasma membrane itself. Then the cell, and many cells make up a tissue. Many cells of the same type. Tissues all performing the same function make up an organ. Organs working together make up an organ system, and organ systems all working together make up you, the organism. Okay, so the body systems we'll talk about here in this class are the ones in the red. We'll talk about the integumentary, touch on some lymph, but not much. The skeletal system, the muscular system, cardiovascular, respiratory. We touch on some of the nerves, but mainly with the special senses. Reproductive, we don't have time for anymore. Unfortunately, it's a shorter season than we have time to teach all this stuff. Endocrine system, we'll touch on that as well again a little bit when we talk about the digestive system. Digestive system, urinary, and that's it. Alright, you got a big health issue project you have to do. Here's some possible topics. And I'll discuss this more in class when I give you the scoring guide, but you've got to come up with a topic that is an issue, that has two sides of the story. For instance, I look down here and see artificial sweeteners. People on diets think they're great. They're getting less sugar. You do the research. Like me, I hate the aftertaste. You do the research, you also find out they're not the best thing for you. But you come up with your own conclusion. Teach us to be a good citizen also by doing this. Instead of just whining in the background, you actually do some research on both sides of the issue and make your own educated choice. Sign up for your mind. Here it is. Text 81010 and then go at Denner Hap, and that'll sign you up, and when I send out the last texts you'll get one. Remind privacy policy. Click on the link right here and it will take you to the privacy policy, basically saying we're not going to sell your stuff, and I'm not going to, Remind is not going to mess with your stuff. Hey, we're done with that. Thank you. Body cavities. Now we get in some of the meat of the subject. Body cavities, and not that type of cavity, not a dental caries, but the holes, the hollowed out areas. The thoracic cavity is that hollow area surrounded by the rib cage. So it's got the diaphragm in the lower part of it. Superiorly, it's up at the neck and upper part surrounds it. Actually, within the heart, well, within the middle, it's divided. What's called a mediastinum separates it in two halves. So if one lung collapses, the other one should still be enclosed. So there's the mediastinum right there. So that's pronounced mediastinum. Kind of sounds like sternum, and media sounds like medial, which is true. It's in the middle, medial, and stinum under the sternum. It divides it in half. It contains the heart, the thymus, the trachea, and the esophagus. So your heart is between your lungs, slightly off-centered to the left. You click on this link down here. They'll pronounce mediastinum by saying mediastinum. Abdominal cavities. The abdominal cavity is surrounded by the abdominal muscles, the diaphragm, the upper muscle, the breathing diaphragm, separates the superior part, and the pelvis is the inferior part. Your pelvic cavity is surrounded by your pelvis. It contains the urinary bladder, parts of your large colon, and internal reproductive organs. Okay, thoracic cavity, you can see a nice little breakdown. I love this diagram, makes it real easy to see for you visual learners. Whoa, what's covering those body cavities? Your body cavities are lined with a very thin, two-layered membrane, which has a fluid between it, which acts like WD-40. So there's a little friction, and it lets your parts move basically without a lot of friction. Your intestines are constantly moving. Your heart obviously is constantly moving. So those are called serous membranes. They protect the internal body components. They do line the cavities and cover the organs, and their main job is to reduce friction. Okay, again, the serous membranes are double layered. They fold back on themselves, but they're so thin, they're as thin as a sheet of paper. And the space between the serous membranes really isn't much of a space at all. It's like taking a piece of paper, spraying some WD-40, and slapping another piece of paper on top of it. That WD-40 basically between the papers, they call the serous cavity. So your parietal serous membrane is the part on the outside that touches the cavity itself. The visceral touches your vital organ. The visceral part of the membrane actually touches either your heart, your lungs, or your intestines. So parietal, outside, in the perimeter. Visceral, inner part, touching the vital organs. Okay, they give a cheesy example here by showing you how it's folded in itself, like if you put your hand through a balloon. Unfortunately, the air, they say, is comparable to the serous cavity, but the serous cavity is not that big. Obviously, they're touching each other with some fluid between them. There's three types of serous membranes we're going to talk about, and you need to know. First one is the pericardium. Peri means around, cardia, heart. It surrounds the heart. So as your heart beats, this thing lubricates it so there's not a lot of friction in there. If you get pericarditis, the suffix itis means inflammation. That would be inflammation of your pericardium. So that sac can get inflamed and you get a lot of fluid buildup in there. So if someone had pericarditis and you ran a spear, say, into their thoracic cavity and caught the pericardium but not the heart, water would come out. The pleura membranes go around the lungs. Pleura sounds kind of weird. If you think of plural as being two, and you have two lungs, that helps you remember it. And then the peritoneum, peri, around, again, and this surrounds your intestines. Most of the intestines. Some of the intestines are not covered by the peritoneum. They actually go retrograde or behind, throwback behind the peritoneum. Your kidneys, for example, are retroperitoneal. They're located behind the peritoneum. Just up underneath your back ribs. Okay, the pericardial membrane. It surrounds the heart. Now, if you're doing your introductory packet and you've got that long thing saying, wow, if I stick a needle all the way through, what layers is it going to pass through? So if you come from the outside, I don't know if you can see this arrow or not, come from the outside, the very outer limb here is my parietal pericardium. Then it hits the pericardial fluid, or cavity. Then it hits the visceral pericardium. Then it goes in the myocardium, or the muscle of the heart. Then it goes in through the hollow part of the heart, comes out your myocardium, the muscle part of the heart, goes through the visceral pericardium, then into the pericardial fluid, then out the parietal pericardium, and back out the other side. So if you draw a picture, it makes a lot more sense than looking at that diagram, which on another standardized test is just basically a diagram I stole from, and it's kind of confusing. So draw yourself a picture, whether it be a mental picture or scribble on the side of a test. The pleural membrane surrounds the lungs. Again, plural is 2. So the lungs are constantly inflating and deflating, not totally deflating, but they're moving. So that provides some nice fluid around there, some oil, if you will. And see, it touches the diaphragm. Your diaphragm is the superior part of the abdominal cavity and the inferior wall of your thoracic cavity. And again, this area here would be the mediastinum, where the heart would be located. Your peritoneal membrane does surround most of your intestines. Again, you get some retroperitoneal organs. Look on the side. They're back behind the peritoneum. Retro, behind, the throwback. Mesenteries are the name for some connective tissue which connect your visceral peritoneum to the parietal peritoneum. You've got a lot of mesentery. You've got dorsal mesentery, which is a tissue back here which holds your intestines to your spine. As you age, this mesentery stretches, and if you don't keep very toned abdominal muscles, then your intestines kind of pooch out like your old pregnant person. So if you look at a little old man standing there and they got this cute little belly, it's just not because of fat necessarily, just their intestines are sticking out because their mesentery is stretched. Retroperitoneum, again, behind the peritoneum. Hey, look, I put some of those in bold red. Boy, why do I do that? It's a big hint that this is probably going to be like a fill-in-the-blank test question, and you need to know it. Why do I tell you test questions? Because if I tell you that, then you study them, then you really put it in your mind and know it, and then when it comes up in discussion, you got it. So, peritoneum and retro, behind. So your kidney, your adrenal glands. Ad means on top of, renal refers to kidney, gland. There's your adrenal gland sitting on top of the kidney. The duodenum and the urinary bladder are all retroperitoneum. So, inside my crazy mind, one of my test questions might be, which of the following is not a retroperitoneal organ? Kidney, adrenal gland, duodenum, urinary bladder, stomach. Stomach? Why did the stomach have a CH? We discussed that in class. Okay, from a transverse section, like you took a CAT scan, and you're looking down across, you can see the pleural membranes. And here you can see if you run a needle through the lung, then through the heart. Ooh, that might be a good final exam question. Hint, hint. Comes through the parietal pleural membrane in the pleural cavity, visceral pleural membrane, lung, visceral pleural membrane, pleural cavity, parietal pleural membrane, a little bit of space out here in the pleural cavity. Okay, that's not the pleural cavity, but that's the thoracic cavity. Into the parietal peritoneum, parietal pericardium, sorry, through the pericardial fluid, into the visceral pericardium, into the heart. Boom. Well, here they all are for you, in order. I put these here so you can practice them. Whoa! What makes you smile? Face muscles do. Hey, that must be the end of this section. Well, I'll make a second little 14-minute video or so. This is part 1. Thanks for listening. Feel free to repeat and enjoy. Chickens don't have face muscles. They can't smile. They got a beak. That's stupid.